Greetings and welcome to the Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. We hope that you enjoy what you're about to see, and you can find us on the corner of Broadway and Church Streets at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings. Or you can find us at bgmethodist.org and on Facebook at Bowling Green First United Methodist Church.
It's always fun on Sundays like this when we get to tell fun stories and favorite stories and do it in ways that we don't normally do. But sometimes it's also important we take a step back and we remember that where we find ourselves in the middle of this season. Because we aren't quite yet to Christmas. We're almost there. We're closer to Christmas Day than I think I would like to be, or at least the stack of presents on our dining room table says that they need to be shipped out so they will make it to some place by Christmas morning. But we're getting there. We're getting closer. So we're getting more parts of the story that are starting to come up. And this morning we've got, Julie read our scripture reading for today, and that is kind of Mary's part in this story and the prayer that she lifts up as she is facing this really uncertain time. Because Mary, her life had been set out for her. She didn't have much choice and how her life was going to go. It had been set up for her. She had been told from the age when she was old enough to kind of understand how things were going to work. Her life had been dictated to her, and she knew what to expect. It's like, if you ever set up a line of dominoes and you just get each one set in just the right place, and so that then when the time comes, you just hit that first one and they all just go thump, 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 and they all just kind of fall down right in nice, neat places. She knew how her life was supposed to go. When she was going to be old enough, which would have been much younger than we would think of today, but when she was old enough by their standards, she was going to be engaged to someone. And then she would be formally married, and then they would start a family, and with their husband they would raise their kids, and if she was really lucky, she would pass away then of old age before her husband so that no one would have to take care of her at a later date. That was how the story was supposed to go. That was how each domino was supposed to fall right in line, because that's how everything had been set into place. Until the moment the angel Gabriel comes and changes all of that for her. And the angel comes to her and says to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus." Now, right before this, this was where the angel starts off and says, "Greetings, Mary, the highly favored, or favored one," or that's the point where you're being buttered up for something that you don't quite expect. And Mary's response to that was to say she was greatly troubled by those words. That's Bible talk for saying she was scared out of her mind, because she had a feeling what was coming next was not going to be something she was going to appreciate. And she wasn't sure about that. It says, "You're going to give birth to a son." And Mary said, "Wait a minute. I know how this goes. I know what happens to women who aren't married and who get pregnant and who are going to have kids. I know how this is going to go. I know how this story ends." For her, it wasn't going to be very good. She knows that what was happening to her didn't fit in any one of those dominoes that had been set up for her in her life. It wasn't all going to fall into place after that. So she is scared. She is worried. She is concerned. She says to the angel, "How will this happen? How is this going to work? How is it?" She wants to know the answer to that question of how. And that's the question that we all have when we get to those moments, when we get to those times, is when those big disruptions come that take take one of those dominoes out of the middle of that, or it all falls down, but it doesn't fall down in the right ways. When all of those things that we have carefully set into place, and something happens and it doesn't work, we want to know how. We want to know how this is all going to come back together. And that's the question we ask, because that's the answer we think we want to know, because we're always the people, and Mary was no different, that we want to be able to put things back into place. We want to know how something is going to go from here on out, because that puts those dominoes back up in place so that we can hit that next one and it all falls down in the right order again. We think if we can just get it all back in place, back in order, then we're going to be okay. But the mistake Mary makes and the mistake we make is that when we say, how will this happen? How will this work? We're asking, that's not really the answer to the question we want to know. What we really, really want to know, what Mary really wanted to know was, is it going to be okay? Am I going to get through this on the other side? Am I going to be able to make it out of this and be okay? That's the question. That's the answer she was really looking for. And Mary wasn't going to find that in her hometown. In fact, she takes out of her hometown at that point, and she goes down to see her cousin Elizabeth, and that's where Mary got the thing that she needed most. From the moment Mary stepped foot at the door of Elizabeth's house, Elizabeth opened the door and welcomed her in and showed her incredible love that helped her to overcome and to be at peace and to find the strength to be able to go forward. That was something she wasn't going to get anywhere else. She wasn't going to get in her hometown. That wasn't going to be a place where that kind of love was going to come. Because, as soon as they would find out that she was pregnant, all sorts of other things would begin to happen. She knew it wasn't going to be there, but she found it with her cousin Elizabeth. Elizabeth, who opened the door and welcomed her in and said, and just said, come in, and didn't immediately judge her, didn't immediately do anything, but just welcomed her in. And then they would figure the rest out as they would go. It sounds simplistic to say that the answer a lot of times for Mary and for us, that question of, is it going to be okay, is to say, well, the answer is love. But here's the thing about this kind of love that Elizabeth was giving to Mary. It wasn't the kind of love that said, well, none of these things are going to be any worry or any concern after that. None of those things are going to be any problems. It was the kind of love that said, come in, let's get you settled down, let's get everything, let's make sure you're okay first, and then we'll work on getting the rest of those dominoes put back into place. We'll work on getting the rest of those things put back together. She still has to deal with them, but what she needed in that moment in order to deal with all of those things was not someone giving her a list of 10 things and saying, well, you've done this, so now you've got to do these different things. She didn't need to know how she was going to go forward at that point. What she needed right then and there in that moment was to know that it was going to be okay. And for someone to hold her and to welcome her in and say, and help her to know that it was going to be okay, that there was going to be hope for something after this, that she was going to make it through onto the other side. They could figure out the details of how that was going to work later. The first thing she needed was that unconditional love that says, I've got you, you'll be okay, we'll figure the rest out later as we go. That's the kind of love that we see in this pink candle that gets lit. It's the kind of love that God shows us through all the things that go on. It's not first and foremost about how you're going to get there. It's first and foremost that we are accepted and we can know that it's going to be okay. Then we'll work on the details of getting there when we've got our feet back underneath us. The most important lesson that comes out of this is kind of a two-part lesson. The first part of that lesson is that sometimes people are just dumb. Sometimes people are just going to do things that are going to hurt others and going to do all of that. And then because we have this desire to put things back into the right order, to get all of our dominoes stacked up nicely so it all falls down in the right places, that's what we want to do because that's what we know and that's how we think life is supposed to go. But you know and I know that life doesn't work that way. That it's full of starts and stops and redos, and sometimes a few things will fall into place, and then they won't, and then you've got to go and you've got to put the pieces back together again and do it all over again. That's how life really goes. But sometimes we like to think that everything will just work out fine, and so other people and sometimes us, we do kind of dumb things. But the most important part of that, though, is that love wins. If we can kind of let go of some of the other things that we want to do, and first share that love, most importantly, that means that things can really change. That means that we can have an impact on the lives of folks that are around us. For someone who is really hurting and really trying to find their way through things, and where all the dominoes have not just fallen over and not fallen in the right order, but they're just kind of scattered all over the place, to first say and welcome them in when they come to our doors and say, you're loved, it's going to be okay, and then we'll figure out how we're going to get through this. That can have so much more of an impact. That's exactly what it was that Mary received. And then what happens after that, she didn't know how she was going to get through this afterwards. That wasn't something that was in her ability to know at that point in time. But things did work out okay. In fact, it worked out better for her that they ended up having to go to Bethlehem. That when she gave birth to their child, she wasn't in her hometown. She wasn't surrounded by all of the people who were spreading rumors and gossip and lies and all the other things and all the things that they thought about her. They were in a place where they were just another couple amongst so many others that were there, and they could be themselves. They didn't have to worry about all this other stuff, and they could get a start on things. Because eventually, after making a detour through Egypt and they would get back to their home, those things would still follow them. But Mary and Joseph and this baby who would grow up to be our Savior and Messiah, they were settled at that point. They were okay. They had found, through that love that had been shown to them, found a way of being okay. And even later on, when Jesus would face those same sorts of accusations in his ministry, he'd be in his hometown, and his hometown would reject him because they said, well, we know who his parents are. Meaning, we know the story behind how he got here. There's nothing good that can come from there. It didn't bother Jesus in the least. He just kind of went on and said, you can't be accepted in your hometown, and went on, and it didn't stop him, and he continued to do that ministry that was so important. And then when that time came, when Mary was about to be left on her own once more, one of the last things that Jesus would do before he died, he looked at the disciple that he loved, and he said to him, he said to his mother, who was standing there watching him as he was on the cross, and said, woman, this is your son. Looked at him and said, and told the disciple that he loved, this is your mother. Made sure that she was taken care of when she wasn't going to be around, when no one else was there. His last act of love that he could give to his mother was for her to know that she was going to be taken care of and that things were going to be okay. This is the story of love that Mary had been given and received through so many of the challenges she faced in her life, but they were overcome because of the love that she had been shown and the ability she had been given because of that to put things back together and know that she could keep going and it was going to be okay. This is the kind of love that we can go and we can share with folks that need it and that need to hear it. They don't need, a lot of times, all these different things, these 10 steps that you have to do to get. Sometimes the first thing they need is just someone to say, we love you, and it'll be okay, and then we'll figure it out from there. So let's go and show that love to a people and to a world that so desperately needs it. And let's go and share that love in Christ's name. Amen.